Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Royal Blue podcast. I'm Ian Croll, and we are live on YouTube. I'm joined by Connor O'Neill, and we're here to talk all things Everton. Connor, good to have you back on the show. Been about 2 weeks, I think. How are things?
Oh, good, Ian. Thank you very much. Having me back on. It's you say 2 weeks, but a lot has gone on in them 2 weeks.
Oh, sorry, my phone's on. Start again, Connor. Go on.
Yeah, really interrupted there by yourself.
We
without
certainly
talking.
were, weren't we?
Yeah.
I know. I do apologise.
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks, but given this is the off season, plenty has happened and plenty is expected to happen over the coming weeks, isn't it? Because as I've said numerous times on this show, it's never quiet when it comes to Everton Football Club, whether that's on the pitch or off the pitch. And these last few weeks, since I was last on, I've shown that to be very, very true.
Absolutely. Another thing that's happened as well, it is Euro 2024 Eve, and we've been drawn in the sweep. Who have you got? Switzerland. Force of Switzerland.
Yeah, I'm in 2 sweeps, and I've been given Switzerland and Serbia. So.
All right. Okay. Well,
my hopes of coming out on top in either of them and scooping the cash prizes on offer are not very high.
I've also got Serbia as well, so we've common alignment there.
I think we're both going to end up pocketless though.
Play England the first game now, don't we?
Yeah, they do.
So that should be an interesting one. I mean, to be fair, it was about time you got a rubbish team because you got France in the last one, didn't you? Was that right?
Yeah, but they still only they lost. So I didn't win the big prize. They did lose the final to Argentina.
Oh right, okay. Yeah, did you not get any money for that?
Yeah, I did, but not as much as you get for winning.
Okay, well, that's all the Euros talk that you're going to get from us.
Short and sweet.
On this Royal Blue pod. But yeah, it's good to have you on, Connor, because we know we try to get you on at least once, maybe twice, well, every 2 weeks or something like that. We know the audience love you.
At least someone does.
Yeah, someone does. As always, a little bit of promo. Give us a like, give us a share, give us a subscribe, give us a review on Apple Pods and Spotify, and give us a 5-star, 4-star review as well, and leave us a comment on today's live feed on YouTube. Find a little bit of promo actually before we get really into what we're going to talk about, and obviously the takeover and a little bit of Branthwaite talk. There's going to be a live pod on the Royal Blue YouTube channel tomorrow at 1:30. And it's going to be Dave Powell, our business of football writer, and Matt Jones. The last time he did a pod was on the pretty much collapse of the 777 deal, takeover of Everton, and it was really good, really interesting, really good insight. And that duo are back again tomorrow live on the Royal Blue YouTube channel. So, Connor, I'm sure you'll be tuning in for that one.
I will be indeed.
Okay then, well, the agenda, it's not going to be a full hour today because Connor is staying basically after the shift, so I don't want to keep him too long. He is dedicated to the cause and we do appreciate it, but we will talk a little bit about the takeover. It's going to be more of a discussion rather than an update because, let's face it, there is no update, and we'll try and fit Branthwaite in as well, and the links that is obviously in the media over the past couple of days, links to Manchester United. So the last time we spoke was when John Textor, one of the part owners of Crystal Palace, was basically thrusted or labelled as the front runner to take over at Everton, and now seemingly that is no longer the case. He has pulled out of the race, which I think at the time we said that, didn't we, at the time that was going to be the case?
He needed a lot of factors, didn't he, to go in his favour that you never felt quite comfortable about ever going to come to fruition. And obviously the biggest one of all was he'd have to ultimately sell his shares in Crystal Palace, and them deals take time, and the time didn't feel like it was on John Textor's side, did it, when it comes to the whole Everton takeover opportunity. But as we said at the time, we did hope that there'd be others waiting in the wings, and perhaps one or two other individuals or consortiums who would like to pounce and show their hand. And as we've seen over the last week to 10 days, there's been quite a few names who've emerged as possible contenders to take over Everton.
Are you surprised with that then? I mean, there's been loads, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said on the last one we'd done, it was myself, you and Chris Beasley, wasn't it? And I think we spoke at length about, how heartwarming it was, in my opinion, that Textor had come to the fore a little bit and spoke about Everton and what he'd said about them being a traditional club and stuff like that. And, you hope that there was more people who thought like that, and obviously, as we've seen so far, that does seem to be the case. There is a lot of interest, there is a lot of names being floated around, a lot of figures, etc. So that is heartwarming that there's someone there, because obviously one of the big questions of all of this takeover process, involving 7-7 and Farhad Moshiri is, well, who's going to step forward and buy Everton if 7-7-7 don't? And if we're being honest, I think there was times where we were all a little bit sceptical about, what does happen here if 777 don't take over, because where do the football club turn? But what we've seen so far is quite encouraging, that there are a number of individuals and consortiums out there who would be interested in purchasing Everton Football Club and becoming the new majority, state shareholding, taking the majority shareholding.
So, I mean, we discussed this on Tuesday with Joe and Gavin. For me,
if anyone who's not listened or watched, by the way, that is a very informative podcast.
It is.
On where, things stand and the background and the business side of it, which, fair play to Gavin and Joe, is far beyond my knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely.
But like similar to when we done the accounts podcast, I was fortunate to be with Joe and Gav that day, and let's just say, their understanding and their grasp of, the whole business sector, certainly from Gav's perspective, because of his personal background, it's well worth a listen if anyone hasn't listened to Tuesday's pod, because it's very, very informative about where things stand and what could and could not happen.
Yeah, and not out of date as well, so go back and listen to that. You can see that on our homepage on YouTube. I don't want to give them too much praise, to be honest, Connor, but they were good. And it was more
I'll give them all the praise in the world then, if you're not.
It was more so as well, yeah. I mean, absolutely. It was more so the fact that I just got back off holiday and I tried my best to stay away from reading stuff about Everton and football.
The holiday blues, did you?
Yeah, and, well, exactly. It's always the holiday blues. And I just wanted to, just ask the questions, basically, and get their understanding, of it. So, I mean, my question then is it more frustrating now then that Farhad Moshiri let this go on for as long as it did, extensions, extending deadlines, and when, feasibly this could have been, the 777 deal could have been shot out of the window, when we knew it probably wasn't going to go through, but even then it was a further extension, and in all these parties, consortiums waiting in the wings.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that now, and that's easy. That is very much easy to say and think of now in the way things have transpired. But I think obviously probably at that time, Moshiri kind of had no choice but to.
Is it, you think it's the legal thing about the exclusivity period?
Yeah, and obviously, bear in mind, we can't forget, in all this 777 have pumped a hell of a lot of money into Everton Football Club since September, and you probably presume that was a factor in some of this as well, that Moshiri was perhaps given the benefit of the doubt, given the amount of money that they pumped into the football club and what they give. So that's probably been an element as well. And I think the positive thing from all this is that 777 won't be taking over Everton Football Club anytime now. That's the real positive, because I think we were all a bit nervous about a potential deal somehow getting over the line and where Everton go from there. But obviously it's not going to happen now. I think that's the best thing that could have happened to Everton, is it's not going to happen. Obviously there's a lot of other people who've now come to the fore in terms of expressing interest, which again is another positive step. But I just think when you look back at time, I think given the money that they pumped in, or they didn't loaned or invested into the football club, Moshiri probably perhaps felt a little bit indebted to give them every chance that they could to get a deal done.
Okay, well, my next point, I don't really want to go down like a rabbit hole with this, but
not conspiracy theories again.
No, absolutely not. I do love a conspiracy theory. But I just thought, without specifically, you having to, or me having to name the people that we would like to take over Everton, because quite honestly, I don't think we know enough about who's in charge. But I would like to speak about what type of owner do Everton, or should Everton get next? Like, what do we need? And so, categories, billionaire sugar daddy who can just plough money into the club. Is it, a consortium or a person, an individual or whatever, who's still got millions, perhaps billions, but wouldn't be willing to, do the exact same thing, but someone who's got the acumen, the business acumen of being able to run a football club and effectively turn Everton's fortunes around off the pitch, and on the pitch, whether that's with Sean Dyche as the manager or, who knows in the future. I just,
Well, it's probably all them boxes, isn't it? A little bit, and you want the perfect greedy kind of owner, don't you? Because let's face it, Everton probably need a billionaire, because they've got a new stadium that obviously needs to be.
Well, we have got a billionaire, but.
Well, yeah, but you need another one, don't you? To ultimately supplement that. So I think you need to have someone ultimately who can come in and finance the run of the football club, finance the run of the new stadium. Obviously finance a lot of the off the pitch stuff in terms of the squad turnover and stuff like that. Because obviously, Sean Dyche's squad is getting thinner and thinner. Obviously, and that doesn't help. Matt's on the pitch, because you look now. Premier League squad to 20, 21 players. There was times last year where Everton probably had about 15, 16 fit full time. First teamers is what would call. How many times was the bench propped up by young kids or 2 goalkeepers? So you got to have investment in that side of things. So obviously there needs to be a billionaire. I think on top of that, you want someone who can come in and run the football club as a proper business, and ultimately, we'll be able to get good people in and the right people in, because everyone forgets, Everton still don't have a full-time chief executive. Colin Chong has done, in my opinion, a really good job, because let's face it, he's probably been thrown in right at the deep end and has had to deal with a lot of things that he probably would never have imagined he'd be dealing with when he took the job as interim. But he's still interim chief executive.
It's a long instant period, isn't it?
It's a year on now. I mean, obviously, understandably, Farhad Moshiri will probably say, well, you can't appoint a permanent chief executive, because ultimately, he's been trying to sell the football club since September last year. No one's going to take the job, because the first thing someone naturally does if they buy a business is bring their own people in. So, people are probably a little bit sceptical about coming in. But, they need a full-time, chief executive. They need a board. They don't really have a board fully. The board is propped up by, people who are either interim roles or people who are, close to Moshiri or Moshiri himself. So they need to, get a fully functioning board. So there's a lot of issues that need fixing, and that's why you need to hope that someone comes in with that proper business acumen who can put the right people in the right positions and listen to the right advice. Because I think, like we've seen over the years, Moshiri probably hasn't listened to the right advice, as he hasn't listened to the right people. And you think back to the days of when Marcel Brands was director of football, and quite clearly Moshiri was still signing players who he thought would improve Everton, and perhaps not listening to what Marcel Brands was recommending. Kevin Thelwell, I think, has done a really good job, because he's essentially been operating with one and probably at times 2 hands behind his back. So yeah, you'd like to see a fully functioning operation with someone at the top of that tree who can take control and delegate out and point the right people. So yeah, I think it's a bit of everything, isn't it? You want the perfect owner, but we're not going to get the perfect owner, but it's got to be someone who's got who's a billionaire and able to invest, and someone who's got the right business acumen and the right ideology of what a structure of a football club should look like.
I mean, 2 of the individuals from one of the consortiums are Evertonians. Is that something that you would want? You don't really care,
Well, I mean, without getting too kind of,
we've had an Evertonian chairman in the past
who's
who's
bogged
very
down by other things and what's gone on. I can see why people want George Downing and Andy Bell involved, and if I'm being honest, I think it'd be quite good to see the 2 of them involved. Obviously, they're 2 very wealthy local businessmen, wealth of experience in the business world. Obviously, they both lent Everton money to help finance the new stadium. So you would want to see people like that involved in running the football club. Whether they are in a position to take over the club successfully, we don't know. But yeah, no, I certainly wouldn't be against Andy Bell and George Downing, being involved in some way to run the football club, because I think they're 2 Evertonians, they're 2 people who can clearly run successful businesses. And above all else, the big thing is that they won't be surprised by anything that crops up, because they've been around the club, I think, long enough. They will have paid attention to what is being going on at the football club. You suspect they will know what is going on at the football club, because obviously, due to their loan to help finance Brandywell Dock, they probably had a lot of intense high-level meetings with people at Everton Football Club. So they'd have a real good knowledge of what was required if they come in. I think that would be a real positive, because one thing that has got to happen from all this, and like say, you want the perfect owner, etc. But one thing that has to happen is that whoever comes in has got to have a clear vision, a clear plan, and be transparent and communicate to supporters. Because I think with Farhad Moshiri's tenure, we haven't seen any of that. The plan has been so the plan and vision has just been so skewed from like one extreme to the other. You go from appointing Sam Allardyce to Marco Silva to Carlo Ancelotti to Rafa Benitez to Frank Lampard, now Sean Dyche. There's contrasting styles there between managers, and what they want to bring to the table is clear for all to see. Moshiri kind of hasn't, I don't think, shown the respect he should do towards supporters, certainly in recent years. I think, some of the stuff he's done where he's appeared on TalkSport has been amateur at best, and, cringeworthy. You think of the,
Say what you mean, Connor.
but you think of the interview after, was it the Southampton game, where he was on the phone to Jim White and there was music playing in the background, and it was just so amateur, isn't it? And like, yeah, it's just not been a great look. It's been kind of one embarrassment after another, and obviously Everton paid the price because them decisions have ultimately led to the club fighting back-to-back relegation battles. And let's face it, it was only the fact that Sean Dyche was so good at his job last year. They got Everton in a position where they got themselves over the line in April. We could have had another nervous May. So whoever comes in, I think, has got to have a clear vision, clear plan, be transparent with supporters, communicate with supporters, and take things from there. Because I know things can only get better because things have been nowhere near good enough off the pitch these last couple of years, and hopefully the new owner, whoever comes in, gets a grip of things and really shakes things up.
I mean, with regards to the owner situation, whoever comes in, I think that in modern day football, not even specifically the Premier League, but probably more so the Premier League because of how popular it is, when owners come in, I think it's a fine balance of what they should and shouldn't be doing. And what I mean by that is, Farhad Moshiri came in, a very successful businessman, and probably interfered in the club too much. Didn't know too much about football itself, as far as I'm concerned. I think you could tell. I'm not saying he was I don't think there's been any suggestion that he was interfering with team talks or team selections or whatever, but he certainly was interfering in transfers and stuff like that. Do you want the new owners to have a very hands-on approach with regards to that, or would you rather them come in and put the right people or hopefully the right people in place to build that structure, like you say, on the board, chief executive, whether it's the manager, the current managerial setup that stays in as well?
I don't think there's anything wrong in someone coming in and taking on a hands-on approach. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because at the end of the day, it's their investment. It's their, they're going to be the majority owner. It's it's their football club almost, what they purchased. But you would like to think that within all this, there would be elements where you can still appoint, a football director or a sporting director, and they, run the football side of things. And if they advise you to buy someone, then you do look at buying that player. And I think everything, the big thing from all this, everything's got to be aligned. You got to have a aligned think. They've got to have a manager, director of football who are in sync. A chief executive and director of football who are in sync. An owner and a chief executive who are in sync. Everything's got to be aligned. And I think for last few years, not much has been aligned at Everton, and that's why they found themselves in the position which they have. So I think in that sense, everything's got to be aligned. And I just think ultimately, the big thing in all this is you've got to make decisions that are actually right for the football club. And I think Farhad Moshiri's perhaps been, his decision making has been, left a lot to be desired, hasn't it? You think of Rafa Benitez and decisions like that, which come back to haunt him. So I think everything's got to be aligned. Everything's got to be the same vision and the same approach. And I don't think that's been. You look at, like, for instance, Marcel Brands as sporting director and Farhad Moshiri as owner. I don't think they were aligned in what they were thinking and what they wanted. I think that was quite clear with, Marcel Brands spoke publicly about when Marco Silva was sacked. He wanted to bring Mikel Arteta to the football club because he wanted a young up-and-coming coach with a point to prove. And Moshiri dreamt big on for Carlo Ancelotti, who was the total opposite to what Marcel Brands' vision truly was. And let's face it, we all know that Marcel Brands didn't want Rafa Benitez anywhere near the football club because, again, it was not what he was in vision. So when you got stuff like that going on, it's a bit of a recipe for disaster. Moving forward, it's got to be aligned. You've got to have it's got to be in sync, and everyone's got to be on the same page.
But that's my point entirely with this, and hopefully what the new owners are going to bring. I think Farhad Moshiri did have some sort of a vision. He did. Whether you say Marcel Brands was the right person to bring in or not, he brought someone in with a clear structure and vision of what he wanted the club to do. And then when things weren't going well, that's when he would interfere. That's where an owner obviously needs to find the balance of, if you're going to stick with that vision, stick with it and don't interfere with what your director of football is doing.
It goes back to that big first transfer window when they spent big and they went for it, and the hope is that this will be the start to yield success and will be top six. Then we'll probably reach top four and continue to evolve the squad and turn over the squad, and if anything we went backwards, and it was a disaster, and it was the start of things to come. Let's face it, we never really recovered in terms of the transfer aspect around it. We never really recovered. So yeah, I think moving forward, you've got to hope that everyone is in sync and everyone is aligned, and there's an actual clear vision of what we're trying to achieve and where we're trying to go.
Yeah, definitely. I just feel like it's an interesting point without going specifically into who we want, individuals or parties we want, because
the problem is problem is that ultimately, in defence of Macheri, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. At the end of the day, when he brings Carlo Ancelotti in, no one was sitting there going, I don't know about this. I'm not. Everyone was like, bloody hell, this is fantastic. We've attracted a proven European winner who has since, by the way, gone back to being a proven European winner at the highest level since he left the football club. No one was sitting there going, I'm not sure about this. I think David Moyes could be the man we need to bring back, to steady the ship. Everyone was dreaming big and thinking, this is a real sign of intention and, exactly what we wanted. And, Farhad's delivered a high-profile manager. So you're damned if you do, you show that intention of, you think of some of the, for instance, when, David Moyes left to go to Manchester United, one of the criticisms that was thrown Bill Kenwright's way was that he didn't dream big enough in his replacement because he went for Roberto Martinez, who, yes, won the FA Cup, but got relegated that season with Wigan. So he eventually got a relegated manager into the football club, and people ultimately were, criticising Bill Kenwright for not dreaming and not having enough ambition to go in there a real big name from Europe. Macheri goes and does that, brings Carlo Ancelotti in, everyone gets carried away, everyone gets caught up in the moment, and we all did, I certainly did, Carlo Ancelotti was Everton manager, but then you get criticised, it's like, we dreamt too big, so you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But I think the bigger picture in all this is that for far too long, too many aspects of the club haven't been aligned and been synced, and we've ultimately paid the price.
Yeah, let's just read one comment before I move on to my next point. So the Blues on YouTube have said, Macheri was being influenced by agents from the get-go. Brands was never allowed to do his job properly. And I think that's pretty much, it's come out that, hasn't it, really, that has been the case.
Has hinted at that himself, hasn't he, and how he's talks about his Everton tenure and how things transpired.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think, the type of owner that we're looking for, I think now, I know profits and sustainability rules have been in for many years now, but it's almost pointless now getting a sugar daddy billionaire, isn't it?
Well, it makes it irrelevant, isn't it?
Yeah. You just look at Newcastle, how, okay, they managed to spend a little bit of money, but obviously not the money that they probably thought or wanted that they were going to be able to do. Got in the Champions League, done well, but, probably stagnated a little bit. Obviously, we know Chelsea's history with that. We know City. I think, if you look at those two clubs, they've been able to bring the sugar daddies in with the billions, spend, ultimate amounts of money, make the mistakes, and then rectify those mistakes where we, Macheri thought he was one of the bigger players at the time, and it turns out we only really got rich when everyone else was already rich. So it's almost now, if you look at the teams that have been successful, yes, it's the billionaire owners still that have come in, but they've managed the club off the field properly. Obviously I'm going to use Liverpool probably as a good example, but there's plenty more as well. Crystal Palace, I'd probably say, I know that you'd probably say they haven't, won anything or done much, but they've had stability. Look at Aston Villa, they've had a good squad of players, coming in at the right time, got a good manager in, but their owner, they seem to be happy with their owner.
But again, no, they're in that bracket, though, aren't they? Where they're talking about, like, Luis could be going.
Well,
because they've got to sell someone to be able to bring in a vote, which, whether you like it or not, just seems ludicrous, doesn't it? Newcastle, another example where, Bruno Guimaraes could leave for 100 million because that's the only way that they can evolve the squad over. Yeah. So you're losing one of your best players to be able to evolve and bring other players. Yeah. And that, and that's the thing, isn't it? And it's worth pointing out that, Everton could have the richest man in the world buy the football club tomorrow, but that doesn't mean that we'll be watching Kylian Mbappe. And whoever else is Jude Bellingham and whoever else is the superstars at Goodison Park anytime soon, because Everton simply wouldn't be able to bring them all in at once. They can't overhaul their squad in one go. It's just not feasible. So
that's why the rules make no sense for a competition. Teams in the past have been able to do it. I know we tried to do it, but really we didn't. We spent big, but we didn't really spend massively big.
You look, the summer, and going off a bit of a tangent, but the summer we spent big and brought, was it 6-7 players in? We lost our best player. We've lost our best player we've never ever replaced.
Yeah.
We lost him for, was it 75 million? I think to Manchester United and Romelu Lukaku. So, all the talk of the 7 players who come in, and let's face it, Jordan Pickford, for instance, from that group has been, priceless. You look at certainly the last 2 years, his contribution in terms of the saves, and you think back to the Chelsea save, Manchester United, Fulham last season, so many, great, he's been worth his weight in gold. But that summer, we also lost our best player, our most valuable player, because he done something that not many people can do, which is score goals on a regular basis in the Premier League.
Yeah.
We never replaced him, and we've paid the price ever since. And I know Calvert-Lewin has come back into the fore. I'm a big Calvert-Lewin fan, but ultimately Calvert-Lewin has never hit the consecutive heights in seasons that Romelu Lukaku did. So even that summer where you talk about we brought players in, we also lost our best player for a high fee and never replaced, and we've never been able to replace him since.
Yeah, and you're effectively saying now that Newcastle, Aston Villa, maybe
they're going to lose their better players to be able to evolve and improve their squads.
Well, I don't think we evolved. We just gradually got worse.
We just lost our best player. We'd been better just not spending a penny, or just bringing in Pickford and keeping Lukaku.
Yeah, absolutely. But my next point then, it's a little bit of a segue, but I feel like it joins in with this whole point. And I don't know if the City case, the hearing with the Premier League is going to align with or finish before Everton's takeover is complete. But where do you think Everton stand? The hierarchy behind the scenes, Everton stand with City on this, because City effectively are fighting to be able to continue to spend money how they wish to be seen. And to be honest, I don't see anything wrong with that. I get, Manchester City continue to win the league every year and stuff like that, but I feel like teams should be able to spend what they want with, sensibly, obviously, without going out of business and stuff like that.
That's the tough point, though, isn't it? What is sensible?
No, exactly. No, that's fine. But if you're backed by a rich benefactor, then you shouldn't be going out of business. I think will City's hearing and whatever this case, the outcome of that, do you think that'll have any bearing on Everton's takeover, on the type of owner that I'm sure he's looking for, or the club are looking for?
You don't know, yeah.
But what if it just emphasise on that? What I mean is, imagine if Manchester City win their case. I just feel like the Premier League rules and everything is just going to be thrown out, and then it's kind of like, well, rich benefactors might then be like, I'm going to come in and buy Everton.
Then you would hope you have got a rich benefactor, wouldn't you?
Well, that's my point. Yeah. That's why I just find it so interesting.
I mean, it's the $1 million question, is because we'd all of us know what's going to happen in that hearing, because I
think it's going to end before the...
That essentially could change English football forever, couldn't it, really? Because, if City win and the rule book is ripped up and starts thrown open again, it'll be, very interesting to see what happens next, and, who ends up playing in the Premier League and what comes of it. But, I mean, we just don't know, do you? You just do not know what the outcome's going to be. I think
we're stuck in the middle.
I think you are. I know what you're saying, in terms of, someone out there who wants to be the best, who could buy a club on not the cheap, but probably a low price than what you would have to pay if you want one of the big 6 or 7 clubs in the Premier League. But that you could easily quite turn it the other way with a bit of investment. Will get them interested, especially with the new stadium as well, of course. That's on the horizon. So I know what you're saying, but obviously it's so tough to call, isn't it?
No. Obviously that's going to benefit Newcastle as well if it goes City's way.
Aston Villa, essentially.
It probably would benefit a lot of teams, but then you might have there's probably like a load of multi-billion pound people who are just waiting to take over Premier League clubs because they want to spend money or just get involved in it, and to be able to do what the likes of Chelsea have done in the past, what City have done in the past. And I just feel Everton are kind of stuck in that bit of limbo as what type of owners should we be hoping for. We know the ones who have put in formal bids for the club, and I know there's a couple of interested parties still probably putting finances together and stuff like that. But it's an interesting point. Sticking with the Premier League then, and obviously they're in a bit of a legal situation with City, but they've still got a lot of to do with Everton, and the points deduction ordeals potentially still not over for next season, but they're going to have a big decision to make as well on the directors and owners test and stuff like that. Whoever comes in, I think that really needs to go right for the Premier League as well, doesn't it, to make sure that they get it right for Everton.
Yeah, obviously big pressure on them, isn't it, because they've got to show that they're an organisation that doesn't need regulating. That a lot of people think they need to be regulated by the government. They've got to show that they don't need that, and they can make decisions that are in the best interest of the games and our football clubs. So yeah, they've got some big calls to make. But obviously, we can't comment, can we? Because we don't know who's going to be in a position where they'll be taking the fit and proper person's test to own a football club. We don't know, do we? So it's so tough to gauge what would be required and what the Premier League stance, etc. When we don't know who's going to be stood in front of that panel, do we? Just telling the world why they should be owning a football club.
Yeah, absolutely. And just Keith Warner's former Everton chief executive saying the Premier League should limit this period of the director and ownership test to like 3 months, and then if it hasn't passed by, then move on. I mean, I think we talked about this again on Monday. Do you think it'll be fast tracked to the point of, we mentioned that the reason that it was prolonged by the Premier League was because the 777 couldn't meet the criteria. Do you think the criteria will be less for these new bidders?
Again, we just don't know, do we? I suppose in one sense you could argue that the Premier League did Everton a favour by setting that criteria out the way they did, because ultimately it showed that 777 should be nowhere near own Everton Football Club, thankfully. You don't know, do you? I mean, it depends who comes forward, doesn't it? It depends who gets to that point of where they're undertaking the test and showing why they're viable football club owners. You would like to think that the Premier League will give this every chance of being sped up as fast as they can, because it's in everyone's best interest, isn't it, to have
get it done.
To get it done, yeah. And you'd like to think as well, wouldn't you, that whoever gets to that position where they're taking the fit and proper persons test and stuff like that, that they're in not so much they're in a position where there's no questions to be asked and everything is in order. I think the problem with 777 was from the very beginning. We all had a few questions, and unfortunately, them questions just seemed to grow by the months. And then towards the end, there was a hell of a lot more questions than there was answers. So you'd like to think whoever comes forward this time around, there's not so many questions around, and it's quite clear where who's involved, who's doing what, etc. And hopefully hopefully that in itself would speed the process up. I think a proper fit and proper either consortium or individual, clear transparency on where things are and where things stand will speed up the process of getting over the line.
I mean, on 777 there appeared to be many red flags even at the very beginning. Have you seen any potential red flags with any of the bidders who put offers in for the club? I'll tell you one now that I've seen, and this is just from reading stuff online, and so you can jump in. Former Chelsea manager and current Fenerbahce boss Jose Mourinho was warned that prospective new owner Dan Fredkin, is that how you pronounce his name?
I think might be, yeah.
Knows very little about football. He's the Roma owner. So is that sour grapes for Mourinho after being sacked, or is that something that means he's going to interfere in stuff?
I'm sure we all know Jose Mourinho is the easiest character in football to work alongside and get along with. But we don't know, do we? Mourinho is a notoriously tough character though to work with. Sorry.
Probably work for as well.
Yeah, I think definitely. So there could be a little bit of element to sour grapes. There's probably also an element that he probably doesn't know as much as what he thinks he does. But I think we're all in that boat a little bit, aren't we? I think we all like to think we're experts on some things that we're probably not experts on. It is a red flag, but I think if ultimately the worst thing that comes from his thing is Mourinho doesn't think he knows much about football.
Mourinho doesn't like him.
That's not really drastic, is it? And it's nowhere near the red flags that we were seeing with 777 over the last few months. So yeah, he probably doesn't know as much about football and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he probably appointed Mourinho, didn't he? So
yeah, he obviously knows something.
You went for Mourinho, but yeah, if that's the worst that could be thrown at Dan Frank, then that's not the worst thing in the world.
Before we finish off on just this point, before we quickly move on to Branthwaite, is there anyone, I'm not going to ask you who do you think it'll be, but just at this point in time is a favourite do you think who's got that unique selling point or buying point? As in, I don't know, as an example, Andy Bell and George Down and Evertonians, do you think obviously that stands out?
It probably did. It probably did last week, didn't it, when the news first emerged of these bids and stuff, and you know.
Where have these rich Evertonians been all this time, basically?
Well, it's quite clear where they've been, because they've been standing
No,
the wings,
no,
haven't they?
been
You know, but yeah, everyone got a little bit excited, didn't they? I think by that aspect. But obviously, as things have transpired since then, you know, we've seen other people have come to the fore and other people are interest. So I don't know who's going to be the front runner, because the big thing in all this, and it's the biggest thing to, I think, people have got to realise, is this is ultimately what Farhad Moshiri wants to do. No,
yeah, exactly.
Because he is ultimately, it's staring right over us. He is ultimately the person who's going to pick who he wants to go.
People who are listening to this on the audio will just be dead weirded out by what we just said there, by the way.
Just to confirm, Moshiri's on a screen behind us as we record in the studio. But no, I think because he's going to pick the person or the group or the consortium that he wants to go into exclusivity with, and obviously
for his own benefit,
open up the books and stuff like that, you know, and give them a chance to see what's going on. Because obviously people forget, you know, 777 have had an office of Finch Farm, haven't they, and stuff over the last few months, and been attending a lot of games and stuff like that. So I think in that element, but you know, and as we've all seen, he is a very, very tough man to predict, and he's an incredibly tough man to work out and what he's going to pick and who he's going to choose. So for me, I think personally, it's a case of wait and see, because it's all on Moshiri, and he's probably the toughest person to ever predict what's going to happen connected to Everton Football Club.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know what's going to happen, do we? But we'll obviously.
I mean, if we did know, we'd be very. We know it'd be great if we did know, but
yeah. Well, if we did know, we'd tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just quickly then, because I know you've got to shoot off. But there are obviously a bit of reports. Branthwaite heavily linked with Manchester United. I think the reports that have come out that United are not willing to meet Everton's asking price, which was roughly around 75 million. I mean, we're in a catch-22 situation if this is the case, because what do we do? We can tell United, okay, see you later. That's absolutely fine, but you know, it's common knowledge that we've got to sell at least one, you know, high-valued player, and obviously Branthwaite is probably one of the highest at the club. But then if it's not him, you're going to look at maybe Anana plus another one.
Again, $1 million question, isn't it? What? How much do you need to sell someone for? And you know,
we don't know, do we?
If only we knew about them figures, again, we'd be, you know, writing it up, and it'd be all over the Echo site and the Echo newspaper.
Or the Royal Blue podcast.
Yeah, and of course, we'd reflect on it in the Royal Blue podcast, wouldn't we? We've got a streamline of, but no. My personal opinion on this is just strictly personal. This is not what Everton are going to do or could do, etc. I would say to Manchester United, if you don't want to meet our valuation, no problem. Good luck to see whoever you get in next. Because I think it'd be criminal if he left for anything below 75 million. I think he's that good. And I know people have been quite critical, I think, or people from non-Everton supporters, I think, have been quite critical of perhaps some of, certainly what I think, and maybe one or two others, that Joe and Chris might have had this themselves, of overhyping Branthwaite perhaps, and being a little bit too bowled over by what we saw. But, you know, myself, Chris, Joe, you, we saw a hell of a lot of him last season, and he got better, and he got better, and he got better, and he is absolutely outstanding. And he's going to get better because he's of his age, and how, you know, he really is a star of the future, you know. And I know, again, people say, well, that's an easy tag to use, but he is. I mean, in my opinion, I think he's a star of the future. It's criminalised not in Germany, by the way, with the England squad. Yeah. Absolutely criminal.
More so baffling that the short on defenders itself anyway.
It's absolutely criminal that he didn't make the final squad. Because I think Jamie Carragher come out and said basically, like, he's the future, he should be there, and he most definitely is. You know, he's spot on. So, but personally, I would love Everton to be in a position to go, okay, if you don't want to pay 75 million for him, thanks, good luck with whoever you get in next, and you know, we'll crack on with him being an Everton player for the forthcoming season, which I think we'd all love. You know, we'd love nothing more than that first game of the season to see, you know, Jarrad Branthwaite line up for the Blues. Whether Everton are in a position to do that remains to be seen. There's probably a little bit of nervousness that they're not in that position to do that. So, but you know, I think Everton have been quite clear on that they're not going to be, you know, they're not going to be bullied into selling them, and certainly claims of, you know, fire sales and stuff like that are.
Would you be surprised if he went to United? If it was no,
because I think United are buying for the future, and he is the future. I think United have got a bit of a clear vision in that they're they're not going down the route anymore of signing people like Rafa Varane and Casemiro, who've had great careers, but probably come at the wrong age when United bought them, and all of a sudden the careers, start to tail off a little bit and you start picking up injuries. They want to obviously, I think, bring in players now who are a hell of a lot younger and can offer a lot more than what, people like your Varans and stuff like that. We're going to be around for a lot longer, I think is the best way to describe it. And Branthwaite is probably one of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did go, but yeah, I think it'd be great if everyone could just tell United to do one if they didn't meet their evaluation of the player.
Ian Clark has just took the words right out your mouth. Has said Branthwaite is a one in a generation, the new Bobby Moore, 120 million or do one United.
I mean, unfortunately, I was not around to see Bobby Moore play, so I can't comment on that claim. But yeah, Bobby Moore was well loved and respected and an icon of English football. And if Branthwaite goes on to have half the career that Bobby Moore had, then he will have achieved some feats. But yeah, I think he's superb, isn't he? I think we've all watched him blossom from that first start against Wolves back in August, and he hasn't looked back since. So yeah, I think it'd be great, wouldn't it, if Everton could tell United to do one and they could find a way, perhaps maybe selling someone else or coming up with a deal where they got to keep him, because I think they'd certainly be better for it.
Just one final question before we go. Put you on the spot. If Branthwaite was to stay and basically, I'm just trying to rephrase my question, and say others was to go, or we weren't to bring anyone else in, would that be classed as a successful summer?
I don't know about I think we can all agree, and this is, again, probably a little bit controversial, I think we can all agree if Amadou Onana was sold and we kept Branthwaite, it would be disappointing, but I don't think it'd be the end of the world. Yeah. And I think a lot of people would accept that. If Onana had to go to keep Branthwaite, I don't think people would be distraught, and I think people would accept that. Not bringing anyone in, I think, would be a worry, because we're incredibly thin as it is. We've lost, obviously, a few players. Still, as we sit here now, I mean, record on this Wednesday afternoon, Seamus Coleman, Ashley Young are yet to even sign new contracts. Yeah.
What's his name?
Jack Harrison's obviously, his loan will expire and he'll be back, going back to Leeds. Dan Druma's obviously gone back to Villarreal. I don't think Everton will be inquiring about keeping him for next season. Calvin Phillips is a player of interest, but
he's got one more year at least, hasn't he?
Well, Calvin Phillips is a player who Everton would be interested in taking on loan, but word is that he's going to have a number of options to choose from this summer, Everton just being one of them. So there's obviously no guarantee there he's going to come to Goodison Park. Like I say, you look, Seamus Coleman, Ashley Young still haven't signed new deals. The squad is very, very thin, and they need bodies, as soon as possible, because they need to be in a position where they can kickstart and start the season well. So that would worry me if we didn't bring anyone in, because we do need to bring bodies in. Because like I said earlier, football now is quite clear it's a 21 man game, and we're nowhere near having a 21 man squad, fit for purpose for the Premier League.
Well, I think we could go on for longer, but I'm going to let you go, Connor, because I know you want to get off. And like I say,
if you want to carry on.
No, it's all good. We're going to be back anyway tomorrow. I am not going to be on there. Connor's not going to be on there, but I'll tell you who will be on there. It'll be Dave Powell, our business of football writer, and Matt Jones. So that is going to be live 1:30, and you'll be able to get that on Apple Pods and Spotify as well. So anything else you want to talk about before we finish off? Are you just wallowing in your pity of the teams that you got in the Euro sweep?
Yeah, I'm disappointed by that. It's not most exciting two teams, is it?
Well, we can
unless they pull out, unless one of them pulls out an absolute cracker. But maybe Serbia, because obviously, we've both got Serbia, so we mutually will benefit from that. But
we can be depressed together, or we can celebrate together.
Yeah, I think we're going to be depressed together, to be honest.
Do you think they'll get out the group at least?
Yeah, but you don't get nothing for that, though, do you?
Isn't third place get it?
Yeah, but they've got to get past the round of 16.
I'm just trying to be positive here.
Yeah, well, I've been watching Everton too long to get positive about results and fixtures and stuff like that.
I don't even know who the standout star player is, to be honest. That's how much I know about Serbia.
Well, you got till Sunday to get yourself clued up.
That's a good shout. I'll get me research going. Okay, well, we'll finish off now. Please remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and please give us a share on all the other social platforms, and give us a review on Apple as well as Spotify, 5 or 4. We'll do very nicely. We're also on Facebook, which is Everton FC Liverpool Echo. I've been Ian Croll, and I've been joined by Connor O'Neill. Connor, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Get you back on, hopefully next week.
Also, hopefully, yeah.
Week after. And this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.